It started with a painful humiliation. Marcus Bennett walked into a luxury car dealership in downtown Chicago, ready to make a purchase he had long worked for. He wasn't just buying a car. It was a symbol of his success, years of hard work and overcoming obstacles to get where he was. But as soon as Marcus entered the gleaming showroom, the air changed. The manager's eyes swept over Marcus with a look Marcus had seen too many times before, judgmental, dismissive, and full of contempt. Without a word, the manager strode over and said coldly, "Sorry, but we don't cater to your kind here." Marcus, stunned for a moment, quickly regained his composure. He calmly replied, "I'm here to buy a car with cash. I'm not just browsing." But the manager, dripping with disdain, didn't care. "Don't waste my time. You're not our customer," he snapped, pointing toward the exit as if Marcus was nothing more than an inconvenience. Anger simmered inside Marcus, but he didn't lash out. Instead, he gave the manager a steady look and said, "You're making a big mistake." With his pride bruised, but his spirit unbroken, he left the dealership. Outside, Marcus walked aimlessly, the sting of humiliation weighing heavily on him. He had faced racism before, but in this moment his accomplishments, his success, everything he had worked for, seemed invisible. He sat on a nearby bench, letting the anger and frustration flood through him. He thought back to his childhood, to all the times he had been dismissed, insulted, and belittled. The memories hurt just as much now as they did then. For a fleeting moment, Marcus wondered if there was any point in fighting anymore. Should he just let this go like he had so many times before? But something inside him refused to back down. He wasn't just fighting for himself. This was bigger. He knew he had to act, but in a way that would send a message, not just to the dealership, but to the world. That night, as he sat at home, an idea began to take shape. It wasn't revenge he sought, but justice. He thought about his father's words, a man who had worked tirelessly his whole life, but believed deeply in fighting for what was right. "Justice isn't something you wait for," his father used to say. "It's something you strive for." Marcus knew exactly what he had to do. The next morning, Marcus got to work. He called his business partners and laid out his plan. He wasn't just going to buy a car. He was going to buy all the dealership's most expensive cars. But instead of keeping them for himself, he would donate them to the homeless. He quietly organized everything, making sure the dealership wouldn't know it was him behind the purchases. Through trusted intermediaries, his plan was set in motion. One by one, his friends walked into the dealership, purchasing the most luxurious cars, sleek sports cars, top-of-the-line sedans. The staff, who had been so quick to dismiss Marcus the day before, were now scrambling to make the sales. By midday, nearly every high-end car in the showroom had been bought. The staff was flustered, trying to keep up with the transactions, when Marcus walked in. The manager, the same one who had thrown him out with such contempt, turned pale the moment he saw Marcus. He stammered, clearly shocked to see the man he had humiliated returning in such a grand way. Marcus calmly approached the counter, where the paperwork for the last car sat waiting. "Remember me?" he asked, his voice steady and calm. The manager struggled to find his words. "Why yesterday, you threw me out because of the color of my skin," Marcus said. "Today, I'm buying your best cars, but not for me. I'm giving them to people who actually need them." The manager stood frozen, unsure how to respond. The dealership's remaining customers, now aware that something monumental was unfolding, turned their attention to Marcus. He raised his voice slightly, addressing the room. "These cars, which you see as symbols of status and privilege, will today become symbols of justice. They'll be given to people whom society ignores, the same way you ignored me." The room fell silent as Marcus' words sank in. Just then, representatives from local charities arrived, followed by members of the press, alerted to the unfolding event. The manager, now visibly shaken, watched helplessly as Marcus' gesture played out in front of the cameras. By the end of the day, the story of Marcus Bennett spread across the city, and quickly, across the country. The dealership was thrust into the center of a media storm, with video of the incident circulating online, gaining millions of views. The public was outraged, not just by the blatant racism Marcus had faced, but by the powerful way he had responded. News anchors and social media users praised Marcus for his actions. Human rights organizations and activists hailed the gesture as a remarkable stand against racial prejudice. Marcus had taken an ugly moment of discrimination and transformed it into a message of dignity and empowerment. The homeless individuals who received the cars were overwhelmed with gratitude. For them, these weren't just vehicles, they were life-changing gifts. One recipient, a man named Jacob, had been homeless for years, struggling to find work. Now, with a car, he had landed a job as a driver. "This car gave me my life back," Jacob said in a televised interview. "Marcus gave me more than just transportation. He gave me a second chance." Meanwhile, the dealership was in free fall. The company's attempts to defend itself by claiming the manager's actions were an isolated incident fell flat. Public pressure mounted, and boycotts followed. Eventually, the manager was fired, and the dealership was forced to overhaul its policies to prevent future incidents of discrimination. For Marcus, this was never about fame or recognition. It was about standing up for himself and others, showing that racism and prejudice could be challenged and defeated with grace and purpose. His foundation, which had already been doing charitable work, saw an influx of donations, allowing him to expand his efforts to help the less fortunate. Through it all, Marcus remained humble. He knew that this one act was just the beginning, that real change was ongoing. But he had proven, in the most extraordinary way, that even in the face of humiliation, there was always a path to justice. This story of Marcus Bennett became a powerful symbol, not just of overcoming personal adversity, but of inspiring others to stand up and fight for what's right.